fit me, a partner fit for me, my choice. Now, in that lecture, we tried to understand the fact that if I am single, I would have to choose a partner fit for me. We read from Proverbs that says, he who finds a wife finds a good thing and receives favor. So we looked at, okay, choose the person you have studied thoroughly, choose the person who meets your principles, and then choose the person that you are compatible with. We concluded by saying you would have to choose someone that you can stay in marriage with. And then last night we looked at family pillars. In other words, we identified key pillars that can keep your family, your marriage, strong and long-lasting. We identified love, commitment, trust, respect, and intimacy as the 5 key pillars that every marriage will need in order to continue to be lasting and strong. Tonight, we are looking at another very important topic, which is so simple. Who complicated it? But I am reading the key text from Ecclesiastes chapter 7, verse 29. Shall we bow for prayer? Fathers, we open your word, we pray. May you grant us understanding. Help us to grasp everything we do, and may your will be done in Jesus' name. Amen. Yes. So Ecclesiastes chapter 7, verse 29, I'm reading from the Good News Translation, which, uses the words that I want to use. This is all that I have learned. In other words, so Solomon was saying, this is the conclusion that I am making. This is the conclusion that I can make. God has made us plain and simple. In fact, the other versions, mainly use the word straightforward or upright. So God has made us straightforward, upright, plain and simple. But we have made ourselves very complicated. Even though God, so the other versions say we have searched for various ways. In other words, the thing is supposed to be simple, but we have looked for various ways to look at it. This passage is not originally about marriage. It's not about family. It's not about anything we are familiar with. It is about how God have made things straightforward and how we human beings have complicated things. All right. But for tonight, we are discussing this in the perspective of marriage. So simple. Who complicated it? Now, you will think that I am actually talking about the fact that marriage is simple. That is true, but that's not what we are coming to talk about tonight. We want to look at the processes that go into marriage. So we are not talking about marriage as in marriage, but we are talking about the marriage process. It is something that we would have to understand. Now, I find this to be a very important subject because I realize that some of the problems that we have in marriage are actually as a result of the processes that we go through. Now, when we talk about marriage, we are talking about the formal union or the legal contract between two individuals. And in this case, these two individuals are of the opposite sex that unite their lives legally, economically, and emotionally. So two people decide that they are coming together. It's a formal union, it's a social and legal contract. All right. And these two people have come to unite their lives legally, economically, and emotionally. So that is marriage. Now, before we get to this process, we have to go through. So, I mean, another definition is a culturally recognized union, all right, between people that establishes rights and obligations between them, as well as between them and their children and between them and their family. So this definition actually, understands that, look, marriage is about culture and it's about we being together, that kind of understanding that should exist between people. And of course, it establishes rights and obligations between the couple, between them and their children, and then of course their families. The moment there's marriage, then there is a relationship. But when do we say there is marriage? And that is what I want us to look at, the marriage process. The marriage process, I think, in an answer to a question at either last night or the previous night, I mentioned that we can talk about three main stages. First stage is consent. When two people, man and woman, make up their mind that they have accepted to be with each other. That is the first step in the marriage process. There must be a consent. So in other words, you don't have to be forced to be married. You would have to consent to it. It would have to be something that you are willing to do. So consent, very, very important. Now, in our part of the world, this consent also includes the consent of the family members. In other words, yes, so me and my wife have agreed that we want to spend the rest of our lives together. My family should accept that, okay, we want her in our family. Her family should accept that they want me in their family. So it has to do with consent of the two families. Even though originally the most important elements of consent are the two partners in the marriage. When there is consent, the next step, the next stage is celebration. So that marriage that we have consented, so simply consenting does not make the marriage process complete. We would have to celebrate it. And that is what we call the wedding or the marriage ceremony. And that is actually the part that I want us to discuss tonight, the part of celebration. So I am leaving it out for now, and then I'll go into it when I am done talking about the third and final stage, which is consummation. So it is 3 C's, CCC, consent, celebration, to celebrate it. We decide to go into a ceremony, and then after the ceremony, after the celebration, we then consummate the marriage. Consummation, intercourse between the couple, that there must at least be penetration of the penis into the vagina. That should happen before we can say the marriage process is complete. So that is it. But where we normally give attention to, which is supposed to be simple, but we have made it complicated. We have complicated it, is the celebration. So my lecture I have the unpleasant task of discussing this unpopular subject. The laws in Ghana, I'm discussing this in the context of Ghana, recognize 3 different marriage types. These are the customary marriage, the Islamic or Mohammedan marriage, and then the civil or ordinance marriage. The first is the customary marriage. Now, customary marriage is the marriage that we normally perform. Now, this is where the complication begins from, because we have decided to call it engagement, but it is fully recognized as marriage. Islamic marriage, as the name implies, is marriage according to Islamic custom or Islamic ritual. And so you get married and then you register it as an Islamic marriage. And then the third one is civil or ordinance marriage. So these are the three that we have. The two that we normally complicate are customary and ordinance. Islamic marriage is it stands on its own, it's done by the Muslims, and that is it. Now, when we talk about customary marriage, it is marriage between a man and a woman, and it involves the performance of certain local customs. All right, so it is marriage, but there must be some performance of some local customs. Now, these local customs normally differ. So there are many variations of the customs, so as the ethnic groups that there are in Ghana. So different ethnic groups practice different customs. And then the custom that you will practice is dependent on the ethnic group that you come from. However, two things are commonly found. Number one, there is always a gathering of the extended family members of the couple. So your uncle, your grandparents, your cousins, there is a gathering. It is not a secret ceremony. Marriage is public. So there is a gathering, and two, there is the payment of a bride price to the parents of the bride. So there is a gathering. So even though there are differences in almost every Ghanaian custom, there is a gathering of extended families, and then there is the payment of bride price. Now, when these things are done, you are fully married. Now, this is what people have complicated and have come to refer to as engagement. But it is a wedding. The word wedding refers to any marriage ceremony. And so it is a wedding. It is not engagement. So now, the problem that we have, which have actually brought us here, is the fact that customary marriage is potentially polygynous. So when we say it's potentially polygynous, it means that a man who gets married by customary marriage has the legal right to go for more than one woman. He can go for many wives. In other words, a man may have as many customary wives as he can. And there is no limit to the number of such marriages that can be legally registered under the Customary Marriage and Divorce Registration Law. That is PNDC Law 112. So in the laws of Ghana, if you get married by customary and you register your marriage as customary, you can actually go for more wives, and you do not have any issues with the laws of Ghana. All right. So that is one reason for which Christianity does not encourage her members, her adherents, to go for customary marriage. However, Christianity would insist that because we value the family system, you should go for customary marriage, but after going for the customary marriage, you should register your marriage as ordinance marriage. Like I said, I will not talk about Islamic marriage, but it is done in accordance to Islamic rules. What I want to talk about is a civil or ordinance marriage. It is regulated by the marriage ordinance, regulated by the marriage ordinance law 1884 to 1985. And this type of marriage, unlike the customary marriage, is strictly monogamous. And so the church will say, look, we respect the family system, so you can't ignore the customary ceremonies that ought to be performed. So you make sure you perform them. However, when you do so, you register your marriage as ordinance, because ordinance marriage is strictly monogamous. So you can have only one wife, only one husband at a time, unless there is death or divorce. So that is it about ordinance marriage. So what is the process? You begin with one of the parties in the intended marriage would have to give notice of marriage to the registrar of marriages within the district where the marriage will take place. And when this notice is given, the registrar will publish the notice of the intended marriage for 21 days. And then after 21 days, he would now issue a certificate if there is no objection against the marriage. Now, there can be objection if the couple do not meet the requirements. For example, if one of them is already married to me, I can go and object and say, oh, that lady who says she's getting married is already married to me. Here's my evidence. And then they will not be given any certificate within the 21 days, if there is any objection within the 21 days. But if there is no objection, then they are offered a certificate. Now, this certificate is referred to as a registrar's certificate. It is like you have the license to marry. Now you can go ahead and marry. That is the implication of that certificate. That certificate is normally valid for 3 months. So the couple will submit that certificate to a licensed marriage officer. Then the ceremony would take place. So the officer would perform the marriage. The ceremony would take place. Now, the couple must perform this ceremony within 3 months. Otherwise, the certificate becomes null and void. It becomes invalid. And if you intend to get married again, you must obtain a new one. So the process begins with one of you at least going to declare your intention. When you declare your intention, it takes 21 days for your intention to mature. After your intention matures, you have 3 months within which you can get married, ensuring that the certificate is given to a licensed marriage officer to perform your marriage. If that works, you are done and you are married. All right. Now, so the requirements is quite simple, like I have said. It is, in fact, one of the most inexpensive and very affordable way to marry. But the requirements are these. 1, it has to be between a man and a woman only. 2, the partners must be 18 years or older. And 3, none of the two entering this kind of marriage shall be in any form of marriage with any other persons. The only exception is that they can be in customary marriage with each other. So if they are married by customary law to each other, there is no problem. But if they are married by customary to another person, it is a problem and there can be an objection. And there are 2 main stages, like I have indicated. The stages are 1, the filing of notice, 21 days, then you are issued a registrar certificate, and then 2, the marriage ceremony. So this is where the complication comes. The complication comes at the ceremony. You know, at the level of the ceremony, people do a whole lot of things. And so you can think of a quick ceremony at the marriage registry. Now, you can go to the marriage registry. A registered officer will officiate, will lead the partners to take a vow, that's a declaration, exchange rings, sign the register, and that is what is referred to as a marriage ceremony. That one is also called a wedding. Remember, I mentioned when I was talking about the customary, I mentioned that what we do is called a wedding, not engagement. And if you should go to the marriage registry, the marriage officer would take the couple through exchange of vows, exchange of rings, and signing of the register. That is a wedding. After the certificate, after all that, the certificate is presented to the couple and they are pronounced husband and wife. End of the ceremony. Alternatively, the couple may present this certificate, this registered certificate, to a registered chaplain, a pastor in this case, to officiate the marriage ceremony at a registered place. So the church place for marriage, and the pastor performing it would have to be a gazetted, a registered chaplain. And then once that is done by a registered officer, but at a registered place, no matter how it is done, whether simple or complicated, it is a marriage ceremony. It is also called a wedding. But like I said earlier, after all the ceremony, the couple must consummate the marriage, make the marriage complete by supposed to not to take too much time, too much attention, too much money, but we spend so much time in the procedures that make a lot of people to marry twice, to hold two big weddings. You hold a big wedding at home, then you hold a big wedding in church. And that is, and each one involves a lot of procedures that make it too complicated. The issue of finances. So, and by the way, this is actually causing a lot of problems in marriages and a lot of problems amongst our young people, in the sense that a lot of them do not even feel like they are ready to get married. Why? I am saving for my marriage. Simplicity. It is possible for a lot of these young people to be married and happy, and they wouldn't be spending so much money to go into it in marriage. Now, when I talk about delays, I am not talking about someone who genuinely isn't ready for marriage. The person is ready for marriage, but because of the complicated nature of all the procedures, of all the finances and all that, there are delays in the marriage process. And that is the kind of complication that we are talking about. Now, I started by talking chapter 7, verse 29, and then I talked about the fact that God has made things plain and simple, but we have made our sometimes the church have kind of usurped some powers that originally belonged to the family. We have made our to simple but beautiful marriages. Now, let me end by saying this. I am trying to end early so that we can have more time for your questions and interaction, because I see that that aspect also takes our time sometimes. The quality of your marriage does not depend on the way the ceremony was conducted. Now, you can hold a very simple marriage ceremony and be a happy wife and be a happy husband. And you can hold a very, big wedding, complicated wedding, and yet you may not be happy in the marriage. So my point is, the quality of your marriage does not depend on the way the ceremony was conducted. And last point I want to mention, in your preparation, the mistake a lot of people make is that they are preparing for the marriage ceremony rather than preparing for the marriage itself. So a lot of people in their preparations, it is for the ceremony. Sometimes even when they are going through premarital counseling, most of the discussions are rather on the ceremony, on the colors, on the bridesmaids, on the this, on the that, rather than preparing for the marriage itself. If we would embrace simplicity and take away the complications that we have brought on ourselves, we would rather prepare for marriage, which is better than to prepare for just the ceremony. That is not to say the ceremony is not important. It is important, but it can be simple, even though we have made it complicated. I want to end on this note and give room for questions, comments, thoughts, and what have you. Thank you very much. Good evening.
So, hello, Pastor.
Yes, I'm here.
Right. Thank you for the presentation. And once again, I'm very sure the singles are taking notes. How I wish I were going to marry tomorrow. All these things would have been taken into account. But my issue is, yes, still the question has not been answered. Who complicated it? Is it the couple or friends or family or you, the pastors? From where you sit.
All right.
What is your point on this?
Okay, I like the options, the possible answers that you provided. Yes, I think I tried saying we complicated it. And when I say we, I am talking about Christians, church. And once I mention the church, then I am actually implicating pastors, I am implicating church members, and I'm implicating the system, the church system. Now, I am saying so because, you see, when it comes to the marriage ceremony, it is none of anybody's business. Now, how you do it is really not supposed to be our business. We are supposed to support you in whatever you decide to do. However, and that's why I would say the church, because what happens normally is that people actually do things because they are looking at what seems to have become the convention, the standard, what we do. That is what ought to be done. If you are getting married, you have to wear mosquito net, we have to walk to church, and then we have to serve jollof and chicken, you have to do this, you have to do that. It's something that we have done over and over and over, and it has become like that is the norm. Unfortunately, no, that is not it, because it is supposed to be simple. And then we have some pastors who, like I said, have usurped authority and are playing the role that family should be playing and taking over marriages. The role of the pastor or the role of the church is to offer the person getting married all the support, the spiritual support, the social support that is needed so that they feel like they belong to a family. If you are a registered pastor and you are to perform the marriage according to the ordinance law, you do that. But to usurp all the power, in fact, I am aware of churches who will not even allow you to be married if you haven't come to wear mosquito net and cook jollof and do that thing in church. Unfortunately, I mean, they fail to realize that if we should offer a prayer in the what the so-called engagement, it is marriage, it is completed, and there is nothing, I mean, incomplete about it. So it is all of us. In fact, it is something that all of us, I mean, have contributed to. Sometimes it is about our friends. My friend got married, had 7 bridesmaids, and so I have to beat the number by making mine 8, and all that. These are some of the things that have brought the complications.
Just one more clarification. Please, what do you mean by the mosquito net? Is it the veil or the dress?
Okay, the one that my wife was wearing on my wedding day looks like a mosquito net.
Yeah, that's the wife.
All right, thank you, Father, Pastor, for the explanation.
Yes, if there's another question, please, you may bring it on.
Hello, Pastor. I have a quick one. Yeah, on the issue of the simplicity. Yeah. Sometimes, yes, it is true that we need to make things simple, not to complicate so many things. But that appears that where we find ourselves, maybe the family you find yourself, maybe the church you find yourself, it is quite difficult to make things simple. For example, if I'm a Berean member and I'm organizing a wedding in Kumasi or maybe in Techima, what have you, these people will come, you have to feed them. You have to get a place for them to do something. So how do you make it simple? And there are some costs you cannot avoid. If there's transportation, I have to transfer, or maybe people have to come from Cape Coast to Techima or to Nkranza. It is cost. So
yes, I'm listening. Sorry. So, yeah, you can go ahead.
That simplicity, to me, it appears theoretical because the demands of the world, and not even the world, the demands of the things that we have to do to marry. I find it difficult when you say you want to make it simple, just make it simple. You may try this simplicity, it will not work. Well, there are some things you cannot avoid. You can't say you want to go and marry and you don't buy anything for the family. You can't say you want to go and marry and people should not come. So that simplicity, to me, it's a problem because recently I got married. I tried several times to make my wedding simple. Look, at the end of the day, Pastor, the cost I didn't even imagine I have to incur those costs. So to me, that simplicity remains theoretical than practical. It's remains.
All right, thank you so much. I observe that your concept of simplicity is financial in nature, but simplicity does not necessarily mean financially low. All right, you can, in fact, you can hold a very simple marriage ceremony. I mean, let me just refer to the ones that we have seen on TV, the royal wedding. You know, it may be more expensive than some very complicated marriages in Ghana, but the marriage ceremony was simple. So simplicity does not mean spending less. All right. I get that point because I brought the issue of part of the complication I have actually led to we spending more than we should be spending. I mean, let me give an example. You cannot shortchange certain things. If you have to feed your guests There's nothing that you can do about it. You definitely have to feed your guests. And so you would have to make provision for food. I mean, jollof and chicken will have to be there at your wedding. That is true. Okay. But then, you may find a dress. They say I shouldn't call it mosquito net, even though it looks like some. You may find a dress that is beautiful at a lesser cost. And another one equally beautiful, but at a very high cost. And we have some Christians who would rather choose the one that is of a very high cost, because that is the kind of class that they want to place their wedding at. And these are some of the complications that have to do with the finances. All right. But generally speaking, when we talk about simplicity, we are talking about how, the point is, a lot of young people before getting married are simply oblivious. They have no idea how the processes are. And so it looks plenty in their heads. But when you look at the simple nature that it can take, you can actually realize that, yeah, the procedure can be simple, and there's no need for all these plenty things, the number of children following you, the number of men, all those things. All right. And that is it. If you have the money and you can buy, a gown at a certain price, go ahead, buy it. But your marriage ceremony can still be simple, though expensive. And you can actually have a very cheap wedding, which will also look complicated. So yes, I understand that when we talk about simple, a lot of people think of the money. But no, it is not just the money. The procedure, the elements involved are important. In fact, a lot of us get married twice. We do engagement, which is a wedding. We call it engagement. And then we come and do another wedding, which is also a wedding. And that is where the complications come in. Thank you for your question, though. Okay, so there's a question in the chat. Please, in some churches, the customary marriage is not recognized. They only recognize the church wedding as marriage. What can we do about that? The truth is that you realize when I was mentioning the types of marriages, there is nothing like church wedding. There's nothing like Christian wedding. Christians actually adopted the ordinance marriage simply because the ordinance marriage is how do we say it? It's monogamous, and so Christianity actually adapted it. There is nothing like church wedding. It is not written anywhere. In the Bible, there is no standard of how our weddings should be. The weddings that we see in the Bible are traditional weddings. In other words, customary marriages. And when the customary marriage takes place, according to the custom of the people, we are done. The next thing is consummation, and that is it. And so there's nothing like Christian. So if a church should tell you your marriage is not recognized until you wear mosquito net and bring it to church, I don't think that church is practicing something biblical. All right. Okay, very true. Just look. Yes, exactly. Just look at your pocket. I think this came when I was talking about the simplicity. But some people make it simple. Yes, you can make it simple. I think most people tend to consider the feelings of the guests. Okay, so how will my friends feel? How will my family members feel? How will society feel when they come to my marriage ceremony and they are served only sobolo and pastries? When they went for another one, there was a buffet and they ate fufu and they ate this and they ate, that is true. So that's why I said we complicated it. The way your marriage goes, whether the jollof was sweet or not, whether the wine served there was fine wine or whatever, was nice or not, should not impact the quality of your marriage. You can be happily married even if the jollof in your marriage was burnt or had smoke in it. And you can be, that is the point. So please, my dear friends, especially those who are not yet married, like I read earlier, look at your pocket. Don't look at family, friends, society. Look at your pocket and make sure you do something that will make the two of you happy. The couples have complete control of the procedure. Okay, we need to know what we want and not compromise, because at the end of the day, it's the two of you and no one thinks of what you are eating or where you are sleeping, and that is the truth. So my dear friends, this evening's lecture or presentation, I'll call it, is actually not for those who are already married. You're already married. For those who are yet to get married, especially those who are still, the procedure looks so plenty in your head and all that, talk about it, you and your to-be partner, and try to keep your marriage as simple and beautiful as you can.
Hello, Pastor.
Yes.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Please, the wedding ring, the rings, who buy them?
All right. Let me put it this way. The ring, as we see it, is for most of us, it is borrowed culture. If I say borrowed culture, our traditional societies really didn't have rings as part of our marriage. It wasn't ring that showed that a person was married. However, our interactions with the British when they came show that, okay, when somebody is married, there's a symbol that is presented to, they present to each other. The man presents to the woman presents to the man, and it is a ring. And this ring symbolizes, our vow to each other, the marriage is an ending and all that. And when I see somebody wearing a ring, I know that this person is married, and so I don't trespass. Those were the things. So we borrowed the culture. Now, in the original culture, it's from the few literature that I've seen, it's as though I give you a ring, and so you also give me a ring. All right. So it is the man gives the woman a ring, the woman gives the man a ring, because these rings are given from one side to the other and vice versa. So that is the way it ought to be traditionally, in the British tradition. However, today, the way it has become, in fact, when it comes to wedding or marriage expenditure, because of the way our culture has been, in our culture, it is the man who goes to perform the rites of the woman. And so, you go to do knocking, you go with bottles of wine or pots of palm wine, and then with drinks to do knocking. And then after that, once in a while, you do, and then you have a list of things that you ought to do in order to show that you are coming to marry the person. Pieces of cloth, a bag with, the woman's staff and all that, pots of palm wine. Of course, later on, it became bottles of schnapps and other things. Before, it was our local drinks. Those were the things that were being presented. There was no ring on the list in those days. But eventually, now we say, okay, when you go, there's a ring on the list. And that ring, we would normally call it engagement ring. But from the culture we borrowed it from, this engagement was not something that was required by family. No, I am moving with my girlfriend, and then we are together, we are moving about, we are dating. And then one day I surprise her. I take her out for dinner, and then I give her a ring. I put it in her finger, and then she's happy. Yeah, will you marry me? She would agree, yes, I'll marry you. From that day, we are engaged. That is engagement. Now, then the moment we are engaged, we now begin planning our wedding, which is some months ahead. So I engage her, and then I give her a ring. And then when we get married, she probably doesn't even wear that engagement ring. She wears only the wedding band, which I will give her. But today, I will engage a woman with the engagement ring that the family members put on the list on Friday. And then 2 days later, Sunday, I would marry her in church at a wedding ceremony. You know, that is how our system has become like. And so normally when we go to the market to buy stuff for the marriage ceremony, because it is the man who buys the things to go and marry the woman, it's become like it is the man's role to buy the rings. But I mean, this is the historical progress that we have made to this point. I don't know if this answers your question, but this is how far I can go with the answer.
Thank you. I also have a question. You have to write it down. What can I go on?
Yes, please, you can.
Okay. Thank you. My first question is that three, and that's the honest one. And that's where you sign at the court. But I want to ask that really need the like there has to be a consent between the two of you, the man and the woman, and that's the parents. But I'm a little bit about the ordinance. You need the parents' consent, because I think that if you have age and you think that you can marry and you don't want to agree, but you think that that is what God has chosen for you, I think you can side with God and marry that. That's the first question. And my second question is the time specific for marriage. Marriage is supposed to be so that maybe if there's a lot of people to come and maybe wait on Monday at dawn or Friday in the evening, so that if you want very simple, then a lot of people will not be able to come, so that you to save cost. And then isn't it to be in suit and mosquito nets like you are saying for a wedding? Can you be in any dress you prefer for a wedding? And my next question too is how many number? What is the number for a wedding to be contracted? Like you have a wedding, do you really need a lot of people to be present, or like you can be in a people then you marry? And do the church asks if you are married at Adventist and young couples and you are married, do you need the Adventist church to be there? Do the pastors and people, like if you're marrying outside the church, the pastors don't want to come and they make you feel bad that you're going out, and so they won't come. For your church members to be there before you'll be able to thank you, Pastor.
Okay, thank you so much. I think there was some buffering in the line, but I managed to hear some aspects of it. Now, let me answer the ones that I've heard. I'm sure you can follow up with the ones I didn't hear. I think I heard one about what you can wear. The veil, the white gown, I mean, the mosquito nets, apparel that the women normally wear, like I said earlier, it's also borrowed. Now, in other words, we borrowed the custom as we've seen it being done by the British when they came. There's feedback, I think, from your end. You may have to be muted. I don't know if I'm the only one getting that. Okay, so it's borrowed. Now what it means, therefore, is that when we are doing that, then we are kind of forced by the concepts of borrow. If you are borrowing, then borrow the whole thing wholly. That's what some people think. Therefore, you have to wear all that. But you see, the thing is that these are their traditional apparel. It's things that they wear traditionally, and they actually have some significance. The veil, the white gown, all those have a reason for which they were being done by the British. And so if we are picking it, then we should pick it with the symbolism and all that. Unfortunately, today we do it just for the beauty and for the fun of it. But from the laws as we have them in Ghana, now I'm going to answer another question you posed while answering this. If you are 18 and above, and you decide to marry by ordinance, all you need are 2 people who are 18 and above and of sound mind to be witnesses for the man, 2 people who are 18 and above and of sound mind to be witnesses for the woman. If we have these 4 people, it doesn't matter whether they are related to you or not. They can be people that you have hired on the streets, people that are your family members. They can be your friends. They can be people you know, people you don't know. Once they have an identity, 18 years and above of sound mind, they can will register your marriage and you are married. There's absolute. So if your parents decide not to come and sign, you can still do ordinance marriage. I am not encouraging this, but I am just saying from the laws of Ghana, this is done and it is recognized as marriage. All right. So, and when you go there to do it, you can decide to wear singlet and slippers. Nobody would tell you anything. Nobody will say you are inappropriately. Of course, it's inappropriate to wear singlet and slippers to a public place, though. All right, but I'm just saying you don't necessarily have to be all clad and all that. No, you don't necessarily have to be dressed that way. You can be as simple as you want. You can wear your house dress and go and do the signing, and you are fully married. That is how simple it can be. I think there was another aspect of the question regarding the church. For us as a church, like I said, ours is to facilitate for you to be properly married, for you to be okay in terms of how your marriage is done. All right, that is what the church is supposed to do. So if you are getting married and then the church, says that, well, once you prove that you are getting married and you want our support, we'll give you and all that. If somebody goes to sign and bring the certificates to show that he or she is married, the church cannot say that because you didn't do it in church, you are not married, or because of this, even though we will encourage that you don't despise the family system. And that is why normally when weddings are brought to the church, part of the questions that are asked, who gives this woman to this man? And it is supposed to ensure that you didn't defy the family system that we have in Africa. I don't know if I answered all your questions, but these are the aspects that I think I remember, I heard. If there's something I left out, you can do a follow-up. Thank you.
Time for marriage.
Massa.
I didn't quite hear that.
Pastor, let him type his question. We don't also hear what he says.
All right, you may want to type it because the voice is buffering.
On networking, you don't worry.
Tell him.
So, Pastor, as he is typing, let me ask this again. In case you choose to go by the ordinance, does it mean that you don't need the customary one?
Okay, thank you very much. By law, you can do the ordinance without the customary. Nobody would tell you anything. You are not wrong legally. As a church, we would expect that you shouldn't defy the family system. So you should give respect to the families. Now, also by law, if you are married by customary and you go to do ordinance, the second ceremony automatically cancels the first. So it's like now you are married by ordinance. And so if you decide to go for divorce and then you return the drinks, you are still married because that marriage, the customary, was canceled by the ordinance once you went and signed. I don't know if this answers you.
Sure, it does. Thank you.
You are welcome. We are still waiting for Samit's question. I don't know if he's typing, if he's still on. And so while waiting for his question, if there's another question, you may bring it up. If
somebody asked something in the chat console, the person
Oh
was
my
asking
goodness.
about borrowing or going for a loan for wedding or marriage. Is it advisable?
okay. But can someone apply for loan for their marriage? Is it advisable? Yes, you can do that, but it is not advisable. I say this because, you know, the truth is that marriage can be cheap, I mean, so to speak, but it can also be expensive. It's all your choice. You know, the processes that I was talking about, and especially the ordinance, I think you paid, the last time I helped a couple to get married, they paid 251 cedis, 251 cedis. That was how much they paid to file and then to go and sign and all that. That was it, 251 cedis. So assuming they decided not to do anything again, and to maybe, okay, assuming they did, of course, the couple I'm talking about, they did the customary marriage. So they respected the family. So the family gave a list of things and all that. So those list of things normally are things that under normal circumstances, a man who is of a marriageable age should prove his worth by being able to provide those things without relying on a loan. I mean, if you are married, if you believe that you're a man who is up to the age of marriage, you should be able to, under normal circumstances, maybe within a space of 6 months, buy pieces of cloth, panties, you know, those things that are normally in the list, in the marriage list. You should be able to get those things without necessarily going for a loan. And for me, that is what I think. So if you do that, and then the ceremony, you decide that, look, I am not somebody who has money. Therefore, I do not want to go and do anything that would be that would be complicated in any way. Then you can say, we are going to sign, and you will be paying less than 1,000 actually to do all that, and you'll be fine. If you do not have enough, I wouldn't advise that you get a loan. But yes, if you think that a loan is better, there is no law that stops you from it, but I don't think it's advisable. It becomes more complicated when you begin having issues in the marriage. You kind of seem to, and then you haven't finished paying the loan, and you're already having issues in the marriage. It makes things more complicated. So I wouldn't advise that you do that. All right, thank you very much. Okay, please can the couple sign all the legal documents at home after the customary rites and be recognized as married under ordinance? Yes, they can. The laws allow that if you perform the ceremony at a venue that is not registered, you should have somebody who is from the marriage registry present at the venue of the ceremony. Okay, so once a person is present at the venue of the ceremony, the person sees what you are doing, and then the person takes you through the vow. So it can be done. Because if you are doing it at home, your home is not registered. So even if the pastor is gazetted, is a registered chaplain, he cannot legally perform it there. But you can pay the TNT of the marriage officer to come to the ceremony and help you sign the documents, and it is highly recognized under the ordinance law. Thank you for this question. I think it has given me the opportunity to bring up something else that I didn't say earlier. All right, so I am not seeing Samir's question. I wonder if it is coming or not. I want to suppose that his questions are answered. But if it isn't, I'm sure we'll meet on Sabbath and then we would. Oh, okay, a question has dropped. I want to know if marriage can be done in the evening. Oh, the time. Yes, I think, okay, you asked that. I think I remember I heard something like that. You can do anything, anytime you want. However, the ordinance marriage law allows that it should happen before sunset. So the timing is between 8 a.m. and I think 5 p.m. That's the time that we have in the law. Any marriage after dusk is illegal, it's null and void. So your marriage ceremony should take place. I mean, if we do the ceremony and you want to do the party in the evening, we will come and eat all the food. But the ceremony itself, especially when you are taking the vows and you are telling each other that you want to marry forever and all that, those, I mean, should take place during the day period. That is what is in the law. Now, if we go customary, some customary marriages, some traditional customs are such that the marriage ceremony would have to go into the night, and then in the night, the woman's family will bring the woman to the man's house. So there are some traditions like that. But once we do ordinance, it would have to be between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. Thank you for that question. I think it's good that we waited for the question. Thank you once again.
Thank you, pastors. Thank you so much. It's been an exciting evening. Thank you, audience, for also joining in. We are so grateful. Tomorrow, marrying a difficult person. Let's also be here tomorrow. Dr. Ando, can you please close us in prayer? Pastor Ando, please, can you pray? Pastor, please.
Okay, shall we pray? Father in heaven, we thank you so much for another opportunity. We thank you for taking us through these processes. We thank you for making life simple for us. We ask that may you help us to live it simple. May you help us to have the best of marriages, irrespective of how our ceremonies are done. May your will continue to be done now and forevermore, in Jesus Christ's name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Good night and God bless you all.